Mi gente, you already know who it is. It's Danny Limelight. And I need all of you to subscribe to According to Woods podcast on Facebook, YouTube, and all other platforms.
What's good, party people? This is According to Woods, and I have the honor and privilege of having my friend. He is part of the Sandwich Revolver outfit. He is the major domo of the Hey, You Made Your Movie Too podcast. He is the one, the great Carl Diamond.
Thank you, Adam. I'm so happy to be here. I've never done something like this. I've never been on someone else's podcast, so it's awesome.
It is. I mean, and it's we were kind of talking off air, right? Because like this podcast didn't exist pre-July of 2020, right? I'd done, various interviews with MMA and pro wrestling shows, and essentially did a couple Facebook lives here and there, kind of just throwing it out into the ether and whatever. But like this, this kind of medium, right? Because it is. I know it's been overdone, the terminology of the new normal, but like anybody that establishes themselves in this kind of realm, you could probably do something to build your brand, and you're doing it at a level that even like major multi-million-dollar companies are still trying to figure out. And you're kind of on par in terms of technology. Everybody's trying to figure it out.
Oh yeah. I always like hearing that. It's like it always gives me hope, because I think as a creator you have this as well, where it's like you're always doubting yourself a little bit every single day, but you got to tell yourself, you know what, you have everything you need. You just gotta get there and keep doing it. So
yes, that's something that you've done impeccably well, because I mean, what you're doing with your YouTube channel and show podcasts, like, it's amazing the amount of effort and time that you put into it. Like, I'm like, man, am I doing enough? Like, I don't feel like I'm doing enough, because you've got like all types of awesome graphics, and like I even love the camera. I mean, we used kind of the still, in the YouTube promotion and YouTube card, but like the microphone and the camera, because
I have that camera around here. I think. Hold on 1 second.
Literally, like, not even the camera, just my camera on my phone. And yes.
This Canon auto zoom 1014 super 8mm camera. Yeah, I've had it around, and I thought it was just a great idea to use it as kind of like a prop. And well, I'm glad it's being noticed.
Well, it's attention grabbing. It's if you literally had that pre-pandemic sitting on your coffee table, that's coffee talk chatter, right? That's something like, hey, what's that? That's a great conversation starter. But again, the kind of sitting around the coffee table entertaining friends has become streaming live, producing stuff from home on a shoestring budget, and that's also one thing that you do so well, on Hey, is the fact that you are asking other filmmakers, you or yourself being a content creator, filmmaker. Let's talk about it. You're essentially the producer, one of the producers at Bumps and Brewses, right? So like you're basically finding a way to, define your art and create art even on a shoestring budget, and you're basically pulling other people that have done it to kind of bring them into the fold and kind of figure it out with them.
Yeah. I the only budget I know how to work on is a shoestring budget. I've never had the opportunity to really use a lot of money to to organize things the way I want them in my head. It's like, if I want to do this, I'll need this, and this. Well, it's not, no, we can't get you this, and this, because you don't have the money. We have this camera from this guy, we have this lens from this guy, we have this actress, that actress, and just people that really were open to working with us, not people that we could pay. Someone who's just interested in doing the act of the activity. and I've just found ways to make it work over the years. That just it really started when I was a kid, because I never actually owned a camera until I was, I think, 23, maybe 24. I was just always borrowing cameras from my dad, because he's repaired cameras since the 1970s. He used to work for Nikon, and he worked in different camera shops over the years. And now he's always been an independent contractor for camera repair. So on weekends he would have customers' cameras, and he would let me use them once he fixed them. So one weekend I'd be shooting a short film with a Panasonic camcorder. The next weekend I'd be using a Canon. After that I'd be using a Sony. And it was always stuff that was a little behind the times. So it was never cutting edge. So I've been able to create a unique look doing that. And I do have an appreciation for older, more obsolete, maybe not obsolete's a bad word, older stuff that isn't so cutting edge. And I've been told it's a very, very punk rock aesthetic. I don't know if that was a cut or a compliment, but I took it as a compliment when I heard it.
No, 1,000%, and that's what I actually loved about kind of old school, in DVD format, like watching Robert Rodriguez films, right? Because at the end of it, the Easter eggs in the DVD extras, you would have like the Robert Rodriguez Film School or Film Academy, where he would show you how to do it. And even his story is amazing. He's trying to get into NYU, broke in where he lived and everything. He sold, like his whole family sold pastries and all this stuff to raise money for his tuition. And then he gets into NYU, but he needs, kind of a piece, like a short, to show them for admission. So everything that he made, he ended up getting that first year tuition, and everything that he made, he basically poured in to making this short. But that short ended up becoming, like El Mariachi, and the rest is history,
Yeah. Rodriguez was definitely someone when I was when I was a teenager, mid to late teens. I read his book, Rebel Without a Crew, and I loved it. And the idea that you could go out and just make a movie with whatever, just barely enough to make it. I've always felt that's the way things should be done. I feel like the smallest crew you can have, the tightest script you can have, and the whatever you need to get by. I've always felt that's the way to do it. In some situations, what you need to get by is a lot compared to other like for a Chris Nolan movie. Like, let's say people say Inception, you couldn't shoot Inception on a phone. I agree, you can't shoot Inception on a phone. You need a lot for Inception, but to tell El Mariachi, no, you don't need that much. And I've always found Rodriguez to be a very inspirational figure for young filmmakers, even to today. But I'm 32, so maybe I'm out of touch with the youth. But it does factor into it does feed into the whole philosophy I have, which is use what you have. And when you're a filmmaker, whether it's a phone or a DSLR or a camcorder, use what you got. If you have to use your phone, cool. If you want better audio, maybe do ADR with your phone or invest in a microphone. Whatever you've got or whatever you can get by with, and whatever you can get away with. It's not what you deserve, it's what you can get away with in the beginning. So I've always held that philosophy.
Now, speaking of beginnings and origin stories, right? I mean, obviously you are quite prolific in your work now, right? But
thank you.
Attracted you? I'm going to say so. I'm going to say so. But what attracted you to the world of filmmaking? Because I mean, that is, to be able, that's what I fashion myself to be, right? Like a kind of a audio and visual storyteller, right? So in that realm, right, it can be quite hard to get in or whatever, but you have to have like something that got you in, that you're like all of the hardships, all of the, maybe like backward gigs that didn't pay a lot of money, right? Like, but it all led up to like a moment where like you were a fan first. So what was that moment for you where you're like, hey, filmmaking, that might be work?
It was actually well, we got to go way back for that. So I used to live in Illinois, in the Midwest. I was born there. I left when I was 10, but you spend a lot of time inside. And so I watched a lot of movies growing up because I tell people that I'm a reformed fat kid. So when I wasn't good at sports, and I wasn't very good at sitting down and paying attention. So the one thing that worked out for me was watching movies, and I would just stay inside and rent movies and watch movies all the time. It's all I wanted to do. And I had no concept of like actually them making it outside of like making movies outside of the behind the scenes. And I always felt the behind the scenes stuff was sometimes more interesting than the actual movie. So I would actually watch those documentaries more than I saw the film. And I thought, this could be fun. The actual act of getting together and making a film, making something that isn't real and is entertaining, was very appealing to me. And I didn't really get actually full on into it until I was in high school. But I mean, I'd walk around with a camera. I'd record my friends doing things like doing skateboarding on the street or playing hockey or just going around at parties with a camcorder, the VHS-C camcorder, when I was like 10 or 11. And you point at people's face and you zoom into their face and you zoom out of their face and you zoom in on the food and you narrate it as you're doing it. And then in high school, you started to get mini DV, and the whole concept of editing came to me. Like I had no idea how to edit, because on the VHS-C cameras, you could edit, but you'd have to get 2 VCRs and you'd have to do in and out. Like there's dual deck editing, and there's an art to that, but that was way over my head. So what I would do is I would plan out my short or whenever I wanted to shoot, and I would just shoot it in order. So you'd have the title card, you get a piece of paper and write the title of the thing on it and shoot that. Then the first scene, oh, that was bad, rewind and redo it. And there weren't a lot of options. But mini DV comes out, and finally you can put it on a computer and you can cut it up. And it blew my mind. It's like, oh man, okay, this is editing. And and I feel like in high school, a lot of people go through the whole movie thing, but so not to like discredit it or anything or like make it seem less than it is, but it is a weird thing in high school where you're like, oh, maybe movies are interesting. I think everyone experiments with that. There's a fascination to it. But with me, I found friends who wanted to do it, who wanted to go out on weekends. Other people who didn't play sports or weren't very popular. We could go out on weekends and go to places and record each other doing stupid stuff and turn it into something funny. A lot of my friends were interested in this Jackass. I don't remember Jackass, but that whole thing, we just wanted to recreate that. And so I did that with them, but then we just like, oh, you know what, we can maybe do something that's narrative. And then we started doing narrative stuff, and they were in the audio video club of the class. And I never took audio video classes in high school. I think there's a lot of pressure from my parents to just take economic classes. So I would hang out with them, but I was never in their classes. I was in their films, but I was never in their classes. So at recess, we'd shoot, this and that, and then it would go to their class. And then that was that. But then in college, I go on to college, and you get people who are actually looking to do this professionally, and who are paying a lot of money to learn how to do this. And in college, there were still camcorders we were using mini DV, but HD was coming. and HD was right on the cusp. And right at the end of college, we started having the DSLRs, and things started looking really good for independent film. And so I thought maybe there's a way to really get into it cheaply, because I didn't go to school for film either. I went to school for international business, but again, I hung out with all the film people. And touching on that whole feeling like there's an opportunity here to do stuff with film when the DSLRs came. Before that, it was like if you shot on film, it was expensive, and you had to convince people that your story was worth it. You had to raise the funds. I shot a short film with the film club on 16 millimeter, and that was nerve-wracking. I had no idea what I was doing. They just were like, we need a director for this short film. And I'm like, I like directing movies. I want to direct. I had no idea what I was doing. And the film showed for it. But it was an interesting experience working with actors for the first time, and learning the different things about what works and what doesn't, and how you have to talk to people, and the persona you have to put on set. Because I remember as a kid, you're messing around with your friends, you can say this and that, you can say whatever, and it's your friends, they're not going to judge you. But if you say certain things in front of an actress or in front of an actor, they'll get incredibly offended and won't work with you. So that was a fun learning experience. But yeah, college goes by, and I get a DSLR, and I'm making short films I'm learning about exposure. And because before I did anything else, it was all auto, because it was a camcorder. So you set it to auto, and you just worry about composition. And once you have, once you learn all the settings, it blows your mind what you can do. And so I continue making short films, and I do a little stop motion too, because that's always fascinated me. And with computers now, it's a lot easier to do than it was in the past with film. And so I get out of college, and I moved to LA with my wife, then at that time girlfriend, now wife, and I start looking for work in LA. And LA is like, I think I was immediately unprepared for LA. I thought I was hot shit coming out to LA, but then you come to LA and you realize you're nothing. I make the joke that LA, like college, as a creative person, you go to college, and college kicks you and like punches you in the gut, saying, no, you have to do this and this and this. This is the established rules of something. And then you submit to it, and you go, okay, all right, I'm going to follow these rules. I'm going to break some of them, but I'm going to follow them. And you go to LA, and LA is just like, oh, hello. And they punches you in the gut, knocks you down, and kicks you in the teeth. I feel like that's what LA does. And then you got to get up and recover and realize, okay, this is what it actually is versus, what my expectations were. And I don't know. I'm going on. Please interrupt if you have any particular questions.
This is great, because again, as the craziest and tumultuous year that we've all had, in 2020, right? A lot of people are having to take inventory on what they need and don't need in their lives, right? And the certainty that was pre-March 2020 is certainty no longer as we hit the year, the 1 year mark of that date, right? So I think it's amazing to kind of hear people such as yourself describe like trying to find themselves, like finding out what they want to do, and then figuring out a way to ply their trade, and how do you get in, and there's a lot of like closed doors and non-access paths that come. And there are some people that will, it's almost like pro wrestling, it's carny, right? The struggles and everything like that, they keep close to the chest, but like when they get to a particular echelon of success, people are like, how did that happen? And
people think, I mean, speaking personally, I thought it would be like you just go there and get a job in the film industry and you work your way up, but it's not. I came to LA, didn't work for a little while, made a short film with some friends for a contest. It didn't win. It got pretty close to winning. But then I worked for GameStop for a little while I was trying to find a job in the film industry, and that kind of, was a distraction because my second love is video games besides film. So I was really good at that job, but that physical media is going away, so it just became a toxic environment. And I thought, I have some money. I'd say I got inheritance money from a relative that died when I was in my teens, and I thought, maybe I can do what GameStop does, but better. Which is, looking back, who is I to think that? But I had seen smaller stores that were still around, and I thought, I can, maybe invest in a store. And so I opened a store to sell used video games and electronics. And I'd worked for GameStop, and I'd worked for a company in San Francisco, which no longer does business in the United States, called Complete Entertainment Exchange. And they're a business, not business. Well, they are business, but they were a British company. They also go by CEX, which was a joke because it's in America you would call that sex. And so it's like, I want to go to the sex store, and it was it was video games, DVDs, cameras, computers, monitors, televisions, phones. I loved it because I love that kind of stuff. And I was working as the camera specialist there and selling stuff. And that have some crazy stories from that place. It was I don't know if you're familiar with San Francisco, but it was in the Mission District. And it was a crazy area. But anyway, back to the store. I ran the store for 2.5 years, and it was a bumpy ride. I thought I could run the store and then be a filmmaker on the side, and that I kind of did it and I kind of didn't. It was like the store took like 14 hours of the day out of my life, and then just to go home and be married and deal with the marriage relationship and then try and be a filmmaker at the end of the day, after spending your entire day at the store not making any money, dealing with people, dealing with customers, dealing with all this and that, and to come home and to have to do it all every day of the week, 7 days a week. It was just exhausting, and it wasn't worth the time. People would if anyone's ever worked at a pawn shop, they know it. They can contest. Anyone's worked at GameStop, they know what I'm talking about, because it's the kind of people that come in just drain you of all your everything you have to give. It's a lot. I have some fun stories in that place. Some stuff I've turned into short films, into short scripts. So it wasn't all a loss. It was a huge learning experience in anthropology and how people work and whatnot. And I'm glad to have done it, but it was definitely something that took me off the road from doing film, which is what I really wanted to do. I felt like at that time, like I wanted to do film and I deserved film, but deep down I was like, maybe you don't deserve to do it. Maybe. And I feel like that feeling has been with me all over the course of my whole life, where it's like, you know what, maybe you're not good enough. You're not as good as everyone else. Maybe you missed the day where they taught everyone how to be good enough. I don't know if I feel like that's universal with some people, where they feel like they missed out. It's an imposter syndrome, maybe. But so I went on from doing the store, and I went to work at 20th Century Fox, which was a huge get for me, which was cool. I worked in the mailroom, and I thought, you know what? Everyone works their way up in the mailroom. A lot of people did it. John Landis worked in the mailroom, and this guy, that guy. It's the quintessential image of working at a studio. You start in the mailroom and then work your way up. Funny story, though. That's not how it works anymore. That's not how it works. That's not how it's been for a long time. Some studios have systems where it's like you work in the mailroom and you get put into an assistant training program. That's not what it was at 20th Century Fox. It was definitely you're there and you're on your own as far as getting out of there. So I did that for 2.5 years, from 2017 to the end of 2019. Well, that's 3 years. No, that's 2 years. And I got out because it was just, it put me in a terrible mental state. I wasn't doing anything creative. I wasn't doing anything, I really wanted to do. I was spending all my time. I was spending 2 hours a day driving back and forth, and I was, spending 8 hours a day delivering mail. It's not. It was a lot of fun, and it was a lot of fun at the beginning because it's like I'm on a movie studio, and you get to see all the stuff you never seen before. I saw all sorts of actors and whatnot, but you're not going to get anywhere with these actors and these creatives by being the mail messenger. That's what I figured. Some people might disagree with me, but the way I saw it was that. So I quit, and I thought, I can get by. I'm gonna start interviewing people. That's when the whole "Hey, you made your movie" thing started. When I was just like, I'm just gonna interview people, and I'm gonna go to Goodwill and buy books and sell books online, and I'm gonna do this stuff, and I'm gonna also. I had the opportunity to move into a house that's been in the family. It's kind of in disrepair. And I'm like, I'm just going to fix this house. I'm going to sell stuff online, and I'm going to interview people. That's all I'm going to do. And it's going to be, it might not work, but I got to try. Because if I'm not making movies, I better be talking to creative people and networking with them. And if I can network with them and make content while networking, that's great. That would be amazing. And if I can network with people, make content with people, and help them promote their projects, that's three things that are positive and amazing. And it was all going so well until the pandemic hit. It was hard to go out and get stuff from Goodwill and sell it online, and it's just hard to do anything. But what became easy though was talking to people, because everyone's stuck at home. Whether it's literally everybody, the small guys to the big guys, all stuck at home, all not working, all with nothing but time. So it's perfect to reach out and talk to people, and that's what I did.
No, I love it, and I've kind of gone through similar paths, right? Just kind of reaching out to people, which. I gotta shout out Little Diesel 408. Says great inspiration, brothers. And Little Diesel, for those who don't know, is fighting for Pisces Fight Night in a few short weeks, maybe about a week or so. So check that out. But he says, just started filming content the other day. There you go, man. That's the first step. That is the first step. And Captain Virgin 69, love the name, by the way. Says hello.
Hello, Captain Virgin. This is epic. Oh, I thank you.
Shout out to you, good sir, chiming in on Twitch. So, yes. So, especially, as a visual storyteller, in the form of filmmaking, right? Well, you pivoted, right? Like a lot of us did, by becoming the interviewer, because a lot of times content creators, producers, filmmakers, and what have you, they're on this side of the camera, right? But at what point did you kind of figure out, like, hey, for this kind of work, I'm going to probably undo the social norm and step in front of the camera?
It was kind of a thing out of necessity, where I wasn't able to be around actors, and I wasn't able to, have people over to talk to. It was like, in a perfect world, I would be interviewing people, and they'd be in front of me, and I'd have 3 camera guys, wide shots, and a shot on each face. But that's not happening anytime soon. At least for me, with the shoestring budget I have for this show, it was a kind of thing out of necessity, where it's like, okay, I got to figure out how to be in front of the camera. I got to figure out how to make this work, and through trial and error, it comes along, and it's one of those things that where it's like, you think you're going to do it and it's going to be fine, but then the more, and you can research it, and you can research it and plan, but the first couple of videos you're going to are not going to be good, because it's the acid test of doing it is how well is your setup, how good is your setup, and I was always behind the camera, so I knew my lenses would be good. I just knew how to make things good in front of the camera when I'm behind it, but figuring out how to make myself look good and checking the camera, recording. Oh, it's recording, checking the footage, trying to fix it, and this and that. It was a process, and only one of my cameras is autofocus, and so all my lenses are built for. Oh, let me back up. So I have two cameras. I have a Canon 5D Mark III, which is a great camera, but it doesn't have autofocus for video. And I have a Canon 70D, which has autofocus for video. But the difference between the two cameras that's most noticeable is that the Canon 5D Mark III has a full frame sensor. It's a big sensor, and the 70D has a crop sensor. And the majority of my lenses are built for the full frame camera. So my wide angle lenses, I'd say my widest lens is 24 millimeter, and that's great in my 5D for a shot. If someone's behind it, making sure the focus is right. But on my 70D, that smaller sensor, while the 70D has autofocus, that smaller sensor doesn't make it a 24 millimeter lens. It adds half to it, so it makes it a 30. I'll say probably wrong, but a 36 millimeter lens. So it's a lot more. It's a zoomed in, so it's harder to frame. It's the biggest issue is space, because the camera has to be distant from the person. And my house is it's a house, but the space isn't always there. So framing was an issue. If you do it outside, it's different, but outside has its own problems. So, yeah, there was just a myriad of things that I wasn't expecting when I stepped in front of the camera to do these interviews. And one thing I wanted to know, I started out with a webcam, but I didn't like the way the footage looked on the webcam, and I'm like, if I'm going to do this, I got to do it the best I can with what I have, and just squeeze the life out, squeeze the best product out of the gear I have. And, I've been trying to do that with every episode.
I love that you mentioned earlier about the imposter syndrome, right? Because that is a very real thing. And it's something that, one of my friends, because he was like, "Man, you're doing your thing and whatever." And I was just like, but and it's weird because as somebody that is like visually trying to be a creator, right? Or audio, trying to be a creator, you're like, well, what I do is talk. Like, I don't kind of view what I do as art, right? But then I do things like what other, I will go ad nauseum, down YouTube on like mic reviews and what works for this and what have you, right? But and it's weird because like I get that imposter syndrome where like, why isn't everybody doing this? If they've got a love for something, why aren't they talking about it and then reaching out to the people that are doing the thing and go whatever, right? But then, I kind of get in my own head. So talk to me about like, as detailed as you want to be, obviously, but
Oh, yeah.
how has it, affected you in terms of your content creation and like how have you used it and channeled it, as Bobby Boucher says, like as you're tackling fuel to propel you to where you need to be?
Well, is just a little note on the imposter syndrome, where it's like you can study all you want and still feel like you don't belong, or still believe you're completely, I could make 1,000 videos and I still have a hard time calling myself a videographer. It's like, do I deserve that title? I think it was Amanda Palmer, the singer, who said that no one's ever going to give you validation, or no one's ever going to say that you're an artist. So there's never that point where it's like you're in the club now. And so I think we have to deal with that and just say, hey, if I can do this every day in some way, to the point where I can sleep at night with that identity, then I'm in a good spot. So that's what I try and do. Whether it's some days it's making a video, some days it's editing a video, some days it's learning about a lens, or so learning about new technology like OBS or Streamlabs, or even the other day when you asked me to come on the show, I had no idea what StreamYard was. But you learn every day, and I feel like there is a fear of learning, because I feel like if you learn something, you have to acknowledge that you don't know, and if you don't know, then you're undeserving. And I feel like we have to get past that as creators. And so the other point you brought up was that why, like, there's that thought that comes across your head. It's terrible thought, where it's like, why isn't everyone else doing this? Like, why should it be me? And I think as creative people, we give a lot of people too much credit, where it's like they're not doing it because they're not doing it. And if they're not doing it, whatever, do it for yourself. You're not doing it because you want to be better than them. I mean, some people are. I did that for a long time. It's a terrible place to start from. Very negative and very, and it's not what's the word? Sustainative, or it's it won't be work for a long time. It's not efficient. But yeah, if you go down the hole of analytics and what you need to do, and like hype words like cinematic, or like clickbaity titles, and how to market your thing, what kind of thumbnail you need, and this and that, all that stuff's important. It is, but you can't let it take over your creativity, and you can't judge. They're tools, they're tools for success and tools for measuring, but you can't be like, if I'm not doing this, then my stuff has no value. It might not be seen by as many people if you don't engage with those rules. Those are the rules that the social media algorithms have set up for us, and you kind of want to make peace with them. You kind of want to have, you can engage them on your terms, and you can, don't let them take over your life. Don't let them stop you from making things. Is what I mean to say. And what I hope you get out of what I just said is, don't let the imposter syndrome stop you. Don't let the analytics stop you, and don't let, don't stop. If you want to do it, don't stop.
Literally, can't stop, won't stop.
Exactly.
Which, I want to know. Oh, good. So in terms of the hey, you made your movie show, right? Like, what has the process been like in terms of identifying yourself as a filmmaker, as a content creator? Because you talked about the algorithms, and it's like a king of the matrix that I have yet to figure out, right? But in terms of just the creation aspect of it, like, what have you learned through the process of doing it, and about yourself and your willingness to kind of put yourself out there to tell the story at large?
Oh, as far as like what have I learned making each episode, and what like based on what I thought it would be like, and then what it actually is. So with the Hey You Made Your Movie show, I started out with I don't know if you're familiar with Gandhi Vaynerchuk. He's Gary Vaynerchuk. He's a motivational guy, and he has this idea for how social media can work best, and how to make the most content. And that is, when you do a podcast, record it. That way you can put out the podcast, and when you do a podcast, tape it. So you not only have the podcast, but you have the video content. You can take clips of the video and put it on Instagram, and then you can take screenshots and put it on Twitter. And so it's the best way to get it's the most efficient way to use your time to make content. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do that. And I tried doing that, and the first episode of Hey You Made Your Movie was a success in that way. the trouble was I had no idea what I grossly overestimated my camera setup. So the first episode is just the footage of the person I'm talking to, and then my voice comes in, and there's an intro and outro. And so it's changed a lot since then. So the video was okay, and I was able to rip the audio and do an intro and outro for the audio for a good podcast. And I was able to cut up clips for Instagram, and that was good. But the distribution for I think the biggest thing I learned was the distribution for video content is vastly different than audio content. Is like YouTube is a beautiful thing because it's free. You don't have to pay YouTube to store your videos, and that's beautiful. And I feel like I wish there was an audio YouTube, and there really isn't. Because if you want to host your podcast, you have to pay for at a certain point. You have to pay for the storage, and SoundCloud gives you like 4 hours free, which is beautiful, and it gives you an RSS feed that you can put on Spotify. And SoundCloud is amazing for a lot of artists, and that's what I did. But I didn't think that I should have to archive my videos. That was something. I mean, archive my podcast. That was something I learned. Where once those 4 podcasts are out, don't stop. You shouldn't stop. I stopped with the podcast. That was the first kind of hard lesson I learned, was that I should have just only kept the 4 most recent podcasts on Spotify, and then 3. Yeah, that's 3, 4. 4 most recent podcasts on Spotify, and then archive the rest on YouTube. And I think I will go back to doing that eventually. But the main thing is understanding your platforms and understanding your the back end of everything is something that didn't even cross my mind when I started doing this, and I've been learning it with each episode. And the second thing was that you want to have as little turnaround as possible, as short a turnaround as possible, and that's something that's very difficult with a one-man band doing pre-recorded content. That's long form. Like no one, if they don't know who you are, they're not going to watch an hour-long video with a no-name with an up-and-coming filmmaker. It's very. I mean, the most views I got were like 175 views, and that's I was like, that's a lot, but it's a drop in the bucket compared to a lot of other people. So, and then I looked up, okay, the best thing to do is just constantly releasing stuff. But, I'm one man, I'm married, I have a house, I have stuff to take care of. I have other responsibilities, and I can't spend all day editing. And I tried, and even then I couldn't get turned around that much. And so 10 episodes down the line. Oh, let me back up. There's something I want to bring up. I experienced burnout over and over and over again on these episodes, because burnout's a real thing, and I feel like a lot of creatives are like, "Oh, burnout won't affect me. I'm different than everyone else." And no, I think after like 3 episodes, I was burned out. Oh, damn. So I waited a couple months. I released 3 more episodes, and then you get into the headspace that you're letting people down, which is a weird place to be in, especially when there's no money on the line. And so there's a cycle of being creative, promoting, editing, releasing, burnout, and then you repeat, and that's not sustainable. It wasn't sustainable. So right now I'm editing 2 more episodes that were pre-recorded, and last night I did my first live stream of the Hey Major Movie Show, and I think that's the direction we're going to move in, because there's so much less back end when dealing with live streaming. There is editing, but the editing isn't as intensive as it is when you just editing a Zoom call. And it's a lot more engaging too doing live streaming. You have people who ask questions, and people who are watching, and you can see your fan base right there. Versus having to go and check your comments, or hope people will comment or leave a message or watch the whole damn video on when you're releasing pre-recorded content. So
No,
that's what I learned.
no,
I hope that answers your question.
You know, a little detail and a great example of what you were saying, of, you know, answering stuff in real time. Lil Visa says also, you know, following Gary Vee's advice on how to make social media work for you. Great minds think alike. No, 100%. And
Yeah.
it's
Thank you.
you know, it's absolutely funny because like there are people, right, that look at like Joe Rogan, right? Joe Rogan didn't go to broadcasting school, right? He had, you know, 5 ways of people knowing him when he started his podcast. He was a martial artist, he was a UFC commentator, he was on news radio, he was on Fear Factor, and a comedian, right?
Yeah, he was a stand-up,
So,
yeah.
yeah. So I mean, to me, you know, you kind of have to figure out like how to work, and it's a weird one, right? Like I jumped onto Twitter. I did much like the YouTube page. Pre-July of last year, I had a YouTube page. Didn't really do anything of it with it. I had it Twitter. Didn't do much of anything, and then I had maybe like I don't know, like 312 followers on my Facebook page and whatever. And I just started engaging, you know, even if it were to post the same thing that I posted to Instagram, to Twitter, or whatever. And then, you know, obviously by doing these podcasts, you know, I had some content to kind of put out there for anybody that followed me or on any other social medias to give them a return on their investment, because this is what it is, right? Like if you're asking, you know, not just your guests, but also your audience to, you know, stick in for an hour plus podcast, you know, you want them, you know, and to subscribe. Like I want to know that I'm doing everything in my power to make it worth their while to subscribe, not just a, you know, piece of nepotism for me.
Yeah. The whole engagement thing and creating a brand is something that really content creators have to engage with, because for me, like the whole idea where it's like, you know, people are going to unsubscribe if you don't put out videos. I subscribe to all sorts of stuff on YouTube that I don't watch, but that just might be me. And I think that maybe the vast majority of people actually do subscribe and consider unsubscribing if the guy's not releasing videos. I honestly think it's more work to unsubscribe. But the creation of value is crucial. If you put out a video and someone is annoyed by it, they're not going to subscribe. But if you put out let's say like the same content for 2 videos, right? You have one video where it's like I'm looking how to use a hammer to nail in shingles on my roof. The video be both a guy explaining it, but if one video has poor videography and has like 5 minutes of the guy explaining who he is in the beginning of the video, then it's not as useful as perhaps the guy who just starts out on the roof hammering a nail, showing you the nail you need to buy, where you can buy it, and getting it done in 30 seconds or 3 minutes versus the 10-minute video. So I feel like time value and quality, there's like a ratio for time and quality and people's attention spans on these things, which is you know, if you do short format, it's a lot easier, I feel, to engage people than it is if you're doing like an hour long format. And that's something that I've been struggling with to this day, trying to make things more concise and tighter and more interesting every few seconds in every video.
No, 100%. I mean, the StreamYard for me is a game changer. And I was one where, you know, I believed wholeheartedly, right? Like to get the essence of a person, you have to be there in person, right? Like you actually had to engage, you know, you have to be face to face. There's kind of like a bit of interplay beforehand, and then you shoot to get a comfortability, you know, and that was it. And that was going to make great content for the viewer.
And that's normally how it works. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Make it fun for the, you know, interviewee So when you next time you kind of slide into those DMs inquiring, hey, do you want to do this thing or whatever, they're not damn, another one, because that can be kind of the attitude of some, because kind of somebody might have like crapped in the Cheerios, so to speak, right?
Exactly. And I try and make my guests feel that way. I send them a little disclosure before every interview. I'm like, hey, this is what we're gonna do. This is what I want to do. This is what I need from you. And if you want to have a drink and you want to relax and you want to say whatever you want on my show, I'm not here to censor anybody. I want you to be as comfortable as you can be on my show because I want to get the best content out of somebody. And that's like, and by that I mean I want to hear your stories, and I want to hear the stories that are going to be interesting, and not just the stuff you think should be out, but the stuff that happened. And that is that's a struggle from person to person. Some guests are a lot more lax, a lot more, well, not lax, but a lot more open to talking about things than other guests. I've had guests come on the show where it's like, here is what I prepared to say. And I've had guests that come on the show just to tell me everything. And then, I've had guests that come on the show that tell me nothing. And it depends on the person, and you won't know until you talk to them. And that's just how it is. But if you keep going, it doesn't matter. If you're constantly doing it, then some days are going to be better than others. With you can't always get steak, as the old martial arts saying is.
The struggle is absolutely real. Like, I'm not entirely sure. Again, StreamYard is the tool, right? And thank you for like the MMA Storytime podcast, or the Keyboard Warriors MMA podcast, because they're the ones who kind of invited me over the summer on their podcast, and they're like, "Hey, we're using the StreamYard thing. Why don't you try it? Why don't you try it? Just give it a shot, right?" And then it became the first month. I'm like, $24 a month, where there's not a whole lot of income coming in, right? Like,
oh, absolutely. The overhead in the beginning when you're making nothing is rough.
Yeah. So so it began as a way of justifying to my wife, like, hey, here's $25 that's going to go out every month on the first, and that might be whatever. So I wanted to prove to her how much, kind of value that I can bring to the $25 that was going to go out of our account, right? And it's ended up this like cool thing for us kind of content creators to kind of get out. I mean, I've had UFC champions like Josh Barnett reaching out to me to like, hey, do you want some guys from Bloodsport? Fuck yeah, that's what we're doing. Like, that's but it's kind of grown like beyond my wildest dreams, and the from a couple hundred followers on the business page on Facebook, now it's like closing in on 1,500. Like 12, and it's weird. Like, the 12 is kind of permeated, but like 12 subscribers on YouTube to, nearing at 312, right? And it's just
that's amazing,
right? Since July, and it wouldn't be here if not for people kind of like, here, take this, do it, go.
Exactly. And I always see more streams from you than I see posts on Facebook, which is great. And you're always putting stuff out, and you're always like consistently putting stuff out. And I think that's the key to success. I think is just always making little changes with every video, but always making more videos and not waiting. And I saw your schedule, man. You're packed. You have a lot of you're doing great.
Well, I appreciate it, but you're doing great things.
Oh, thank you.
I look to you as somebody where, like, man, I need to do more. Like, I need to up the production quality. I need to, like, you're nipping at my heels, and but that it's just like, you hear in other sports, right? The competitive, the friendly competition, right, amongst people, right? If you look at any other, and I think it's Eddie Torres of Rock and Roll Beer Guy podcast, who told me, like, if you look at it, everybody that's been successful in life and in history, right, has always had their crew. And it's definitely true as far as media is concerned. You look at we're in this realm of like podcasting and what have you, right? Look
Mhm.
at Howard Stern. He had his group, right? He had Robin, he had all of these, kind of like co-hosts and whatever that were enigmatic, but that was his group. Look at Joe Rogan, right? To me, I think this at this time and place, with the context, the many of context that he has on his show, he's the best. He's the best. Not only is he the best MMA commentator for my money, but he's also the best podcaster, right? So with that all being said, it's just like just to reach out to folks and see, because you never know what could happen. You never know what could happen. And again, I want this to kind of be this collective where all of us, like, 5, 10 years down the road, and we're looking at each other and we've all achieved our dreams through this. And we're looking like, yo, we did it together. Like we're our collective. We're our own, like we're our own industrial revolution.
I share in that vision, and I'm glad to hear that you do. I always felt that it's always better to be in a room full of people that are smarter than you than to be the smartest person in the room. And because it's like you're not going to learn anything if you're the smartest person in the room, and all the feedback you're going to get is not valid. But if you're the dumbest person in the room, then all the feedback you're going to get is like, hey, this is every way I can improve. And you know what? The feedback is valid because the people around you who are giving you the feedback have proven that it works. So I feel like that. And it took me a while to get there. For a long time you get the ego and you're in your ego gets in the way. You're like, I'm great. I'm born to do this. And it's like, no one's born to do anything.
So 100%, which I gotta ask you, right? Because you're somebody that I look to as, a great you as far as your production and the way that you've gone about it, you've become like I said at the beginning, an impresario of visual storytelling. So as somebody that is doing it right to the level that you are,
Mm-hmm.
what advice would you give to other content creators, filmmakers, and people that, again, because right now everything is precarious. There's no certainty at all, right? And people are trying to figure out ways to do whatever just to try and get by. So what advice would you give to other folks that are in similar situations like you were when you were watching Jackass, much like me, and trying to figure it out?
My advice is, if you make it about you, you're not going to get anywhere. Find a way, find the community you're interested in, and find a way to help that community while doing the thing that you love, and always be talking to people, whether anything comes of it or not. It doesn't matter. It's the fact that you have talked to people, and the numbers will eventually work in your favor, that you will network and learn and just grow. And don't stop. Don't let the voice in your head, the negative roommate, tell you that you're not worth it, because there's so much that's going to tell you that you're not worth it. Social media is going to tell you that you're not worth it. Like the world's going to tell you that you're worth it. Your relatives are going to tell you you're not worth it. What are you doing? What you're wasting your time? You're going to starve to death. You can't eat a camera. I've heard it all. The last person, like, you don't need to hear that shit from yourself. You at the end of the day, if no one else is supporting you, you have to support you. And don't worry if your idea isn't perfect the first time. I started doing Sandwich Revolver. That was before Hey Major Movie, and it was just my friend John Reeve and I. He's an actor, and he's one of the guys who I did films with in high school, and we've been friends since. And we love talking about movies and making movies, and we thought, why not have a show where we just talk about movies and video games while drinking a beer. And the first episode was terrible. It didn't even come out because I shot it in my store at night, and I thought, I don't need a script. We can just talk about this. And you need a script, brother. You need an outline, an idea of what you're going to do. Otherwise, you'll get lost once the camera turns on. another thing I'd say is don't stop learning. Always find ways to improve your stuff, because your stuff is never going to be perfect. And if it is perfect, then ask someone who's better than you if it's perfect. And well, if you think it's perfect, ask someone. Because if it's perfect, then you don't worry. Then you're not even thinking that it's perfect, because it's, you would have made, got hundreds of views, and you would have had a steady income, and it would have been set. And if you're not there, then there's always a space to improve. If you're not where you want to be, don't worry. You can get there, but maybe you gotta. Let me back up. It's I don't know, Tony Robbins said this, and it's like, always be critiquing your strategy. Try something, doesn't work, go back, re-strategize. And that's a cycle you have to get yourself into, because otherwise you'll just sit there and do nothing. And you will at some point sit there and do nothing. Everyone does it. It's not a failure. It's just it's part of the process. There's always the pit. I'm sure you're familiar with the pit of misery and sadness, where you sit in and go, why? What am I doing? What is this and that? And then you go through that process, and eventually you look and go, okay, here's what I need to do, because I don't want to go back to that process. I don't want to go back to that place. So it comes down to keep going, keep learning, keep improving. Don't look back, and don't compare yourself to other people.
There it is. Now, you spoke of the process, right? And there's been a litany of people, both professionally and personally, that have helped you, essentially along the way of your journey. So Let's get some shout outs out of the way, my man.
Oh, yeah. Everybody. You can't do this alone. No man is an island. And so I want to thank so many people. I want to thank my dad, of course, because he gave me the cameras. But really, Martin Hill of Bumps and Brewses, and Mikey Hawks of Bumps and Brewses. Those guys came up to me when I was working at Fox, and I had no reel, and they're like, "Hey, Carl, you like shooting movies? We need a guy who can shoot for us." And we're doing this with this wrestling show where you combine beer and whatnot. I saw your show. You talk about beer, and why don't you come shoot for us? And I got on, and I was producing for them, and running a camera crew of people, and that was wild. I thought I'd never be able to do that anytime soon. And we've had, it's a bumpy journey, Bumps and Bruises, but no pun intended. But it gets better with every show, and my camera work has grown so much as a result of the opportunity that Mikey and Marty gave me. So I'm forever grateful for them. And let's see, also my partner on Sandwich Revolver, John Reeve, and his continued energy to want to do more episodes. Everyone who's been on the Hey You Made Your Movie show, and everyone who supported me on that show. Daryl Shaw, who is a constant guy coming on, always giving me feedback on my episodes and my lighting. And he's a filmmaker up in Canada who I've gone on the phone with him and shown him stills of what I'm doing, and he's like, okay, you have to move the light here, move the light there. It's insane. He's not even, it's like he's in the room with me, and he sets up, he fixes the light. What else? Scott J. Ramsey, who I interviewed last night for the first stream, and he was the first guy to come on my show to give me a shot. And his patience and is great. The fact that he's volunteered his time. So everyone would be on the show. So Jet Jansen was a great interview. Michael Lacastri, Michael Mazaroff, Ryan McDonald, I'm blanking on her name. Liz Lockman, who was like the first big name that I got on the show, and she reached out to me through Instagram, and that was a great interview. So many. The people who are coming up in the new episodes. Damn it, I'm blanking on their names, but yeah, the new episodes that are coming out. Make sure to check them out. They're really good interviews. I got one filmmaker from Austin who made this John Carpenter-esque conspiracy movie satire, and then I interviewed a filmmaker, a French filmmaker who's living in Japan, and he made this film called Sayo, and it hasn't got distribution yet, but it's fascinating. It's about a woman who goes to the afterlife looking for her sister, and he managed to shoot this movie using a cinema camera, and then he also used 8mm stock footage, and he shot it during quarantine in Japan, which is amazing. That interview is coming up. And everybody who's given support for the show, like you have been incredibly supportive of the show. Tizzy Friedman and Panda Koto and Saif Zaman, in all this the film collective of guys in New York. They've been great on Facebook, giving me their support. Hopefully, I want to get them on the show one day. Saif made a really cool movie. He shot it on like 3 phones and then a small Sony camera. It's this neo-noir. It takes place in New York City, and it looks gorgeous. So yeah, if I haven't said your name and you support the show, I'm so sorry. Thank you for your support. That's just all the people I could think of off the top of my head. My lovely wife Rebecca, thank you for tolerating it and constantly supporting me. So yeah. Hey, yeah, if you haven't already and you want to check out the show, it's the Hey You Made Your Movie show on YouTube. It's Hey You Made Your Movie on Instagram, and Hey Make Your Movie on Twitter. It's different because Twitter's weird. But yeah, go over there, watch an episode. It's a good time. We have an honest conversation with filmmakers, and if you ever wanted to know about the filmmaking process, or if you are a filmmaker and you want to hear actual stories of what it was like for people to go through and make their first feature film, this is the show for you. And hit that like and subscribe button over there. It really helps out with the algorithm, and we want to get those numbers up so we can support more filmmakers. And if you're into movies, video games, and craft beer, which is a good thing to be into, check out my show Sandwich Revolver every Thursday on YouTube. We're doing another episode tomorrow. And it's a laid back show. It's me and my friend John talking about movies and video games. We watch the latest trailers and talk about them, and we look at video game news and the most recent releases, and we focus on one movie, and we're sipping craft beer while we're doing it, and making jokes, and there's a lot of interaction with the audience. So if you want to come by and hang out with us, please, the more the merrier.
Hell yes! Now go ahead and subscribe, folks. Like you've seen some great stuff. Like I'm subscribed on both my personal page. I mean, you could kind of read in the weeds what that is, but also the According to Woods page. And you should definitely subscribe to both Sandwich Revolver and Hey, You Made Your Movie, because it's one of my favorite pieces of content to view on YouTube. But while you're doing that, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe to the According to Woods podcast on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. Yes, we're on Twitch, as evidenced with Mr. 69 there. Yeah, that happened. But Carl, thank you so much for your story. I can't thank you enough. You've been a amazing. I mean, we're not friends at this point. We're brothers. Like, you've been a brother in arms, like many a time, and you
since the first Bumps and Brewses, man.
To me and what I was doing, and at the times where I was at my lowest. I can't thank you enough, my man.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been a pleasure, Adam. Thank you for having me on the show. It's a great conversation. It's really fun. I hope to come back one day.
Yeah, dang right. We're gonna do this again. So the way to do that, right, to catch this whole interaction once more, is by subscribing to both the Sandwich Revolver, as well as the Hey You Make Your Movie podcast, as well as the According to Woods podcast. And I mean, you're subscribed, right?
Yeah, man. I check out your stuff all the time.
Dang right. It's almost like the New Day. We feel the power again.
Yeah. Oh, we're there.
The power.
Yeah.
And if you don't take Carl's word for it, well, here's for Wrestler Zeta Zang to convince you.
Hey,